The forest was a thick, green blanket around the small pack's territory, a place of quiet secrets and dappled sunlight. It was here, on the mossy bank of a chattering stream, that we find our Sasha. Her fingers, delicate but strong, brushed against the leaves of a healing herb, plucking it gently and placing it in her worn-woven basket. She moved with a quiet grace, a silence that seemed to seep from her very soul. But this silence was not her own. It was a shield. A fortress she had built around herself 8 long years ago. To look at her, you would see a young woman of striking, quiet beauty, with eyes the color of rich earth that held a universe of unspoken thoughts. Her hair, the deep brown of fertile soil, fell in waves over her shoulders. But her most defining feature was her silence. For 8 years, not a single word had passed her lips in the presence of another soul. The members of her small, humble pack knew her as the gentle mute, the girl whose voice had been stolen by a terrible fever when she was just a child. They were kind to her, protective in their own way, but they could never know the truth. The truth was a carefully guarded secret that lived in the constant, watchful fear in Sasha's eyes. The memory of that day 8 years past was as sharp and cold as a winter icicle. A visiting alpha from the harsh northern packs, a mountain of a man named Boris with a laugh that sounded like grinding stones, had come to discuss borders. His cold eyes had fallen upon the young, vibrant Sasha, then just a girl playing near the meeting hall. He had pointed a thick finger at her and declared to her parents, "That one. She has spirit in her eyes. When she is of age, I will return to claim her." The air had gone out of the room. Everyone knew of Boris's cruelty, of his mistreatment of his pack, of the broken souls who called him Alpha. To be claimed by him was a life sentence to misery. That very night, a desperate, terrifying idea had taken root in Sasha's young mind. And so the fever came. Or so everyone was told. She had woken up, looked at her frantic mother, and simply stopped speaking. She had wrapped herself in a blanket of silence so convincing, so absolute, that it had saved her. Year after year she maintained the lie, communicating only through gestures, gentle touches, and hastily written notes on scraps of paper. It was a lonely prison, but it was safer than the alternative. Her peaceful, silent world was about to be shaken to its very core. News had been buzzing through the pack for days, a current of nervous excitement. The Alpha King, Rylan himself, was touring the outer territories. He was not just any alpha. He was the king of all the packs, a legend spoken of with a mix of awe and respect. He was known for his strength but also for his fierce sense of justice. His visits were rare, and the entire pack had been preparing, cleaning, and cooking for his arrival. Sasha felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. Strangers meant questions. Attention meant danger. She hoped to stay in the background, invisible as she always was. The sound of powerful engines echoed through the valley, a sound so foreign it made the birds take flight. Sasha watched from the shadowed doorway of her family's cottage as a convoy of vehicles arrived. And then he stepped out. Alpha King Rylan. He was taller than any man she had ever seen, with broad shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of his title with ease. His hair was the color of dark sand, and his eyes, even from a distance, seemed to miss nothing, taking in the pack, the people, the state of everything with a single, sweeping glance. He moved with a powerful, easy confidence, greeting the pack elders with a firm handshake and a smile that, surprisingly, reached his eyes. There was a warmth to him that she had not expected from a king. As he toured the small village, Sasha tried to melt into the walls, to become part of the scenery. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As Rylan passed her cottage, his gaze, intense and thoughtful, swept across the yard and landed on her. It was just for a second, but it felt like an eternity. Those eyes, a startling shade of stormy blue, held hers. Sasha felt a jolt, a strange electric warmth that shot right through her silent body. It was unsettling and confusing. She quickly dropped her gaze to the ground, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She could feel the weight of his curiosity even after he moved on. He had seen her. Truly seen her, not just the silent girl in the background. And in that single, fleeting glance, something deep within her, something she had locked away for 8 years, stirred awake. The world, which had been shades of gray and fear, suddenly held a glimmer of something new, something terrifying and wonderful all at once. The walls of her silent fortress for the first time felt thin. The afternoon sun, now dipping towards the treetops, cast long lazy shadows across the village clearing. The formal greetings were over, the discussions with the elders concluded, yet the Alpha King's presence remained, a tangible energy that charged the very air. Rylan found himself giving a casual wave to his beta, a silent signal that they would not be departing just yet. A strange, unshakable pull rooted him to this insignificant little patch of land, a feeling he, a king accustomed to decisive action, could not logically explain. His mind kept drifting back to the girl with the earth-colored eyes, the one who watched the world from a place of profound quiet. Her silence was a puzzle, and Rylan, a man who solved problems for a living, felt an irresistible need to understand it. He inquired about her, his tone carefully neutral, not wanting to draw any unwanted attention her way. The pack elder, a kindly old man with weathered hands, simply shook his head with a sigh. "That is Sasha, my king. A gentle soul. A terrible sickness took her voice when she was a child. She hasn't spoken a word in 8 years. It is a great sadness." The story was delivered with practiced ease, a tale told so many times it had become accepted fact. But something in Ryland's soul, in the primal instinct of the alpha, and the man, beneath the crown, whispered that it was not the whole truth. Her eyes in that brief moment they had met his had not held the emptiness of one who had lost something. They had held a deep, startling intelligence, a watchful awareness that spoke of a conscious choice, not a tragic accident. Meanwhile, Sasha had fled the intensity of the king's gaze, seeking the only sanctuary she had ever known, the deep, embracing woods. The familiar scent of pine needles and damp earth usually calmed her, but today her nerves were stretched taut. The image of the Alpha King was burned into her mind. The sheer power of him, the quiet authority, but more than that, the unexpected warmth in his stormy blue eyes had unnerved her completely. It had been a look of seeing, not just looking. It had felt, for a terrifying and thrilling second, like being truly seen for the first time in 8 years. She busied herself with her task, her basket hooked over her arm as she searched for more herbs, her movements automatic, her mind a whirlwind. It was there, in a sun-dappled grove where the stream's song was the only sound, that he found her. Rylan had followed the subtle, sweet scent of her, wildflowers and sunshine, that had been teasing his senses since he'd arrived. He moved through the trees with a predator's quiet grace, stopping at the edge of the clearing to watch her for a moment. She was utterly absorbed, her brow furrowed in concentration, and the sight of her, so peaceful and yet so clearly full of unspoken life, made that strange pull in his chest intensify into a near-physical ache. He stepped into the clearing, and the snap of a twig under his boot made her startle, spinning around with wide, fearful eyes. She immediately dropped into a low curtsy, her head bowed, one hand flying to her throat in the familiar, heartbreaking gesture she used to communicate her inability to speak. "Please, there's no need for that," Ryland said, his voice softer than he'd used all day, a gentle rumble meant to soothe, not command. He took a few steps closer but not too close, giving her space. "Sasha, is it?" She nodded, her eyes still fixed on the ground. "My elder told me you are knowledgeable about the healing plants here. This is a valuable skill." He was making conversation, something he rarely bothered with, grasping for any thread to keep her near. She simply nodded again, her body tense as a drawn bowstring. He tried another question, something about the types of herbs that grew in this specific soil, but her responses were limited to gestures and more nervous nodding. The frustration was not with her, but with the invisible wall that stood between them. He could feel the words trapped inside her, the vibrant person screaming to get out. He was about to speak again, to tell her she didn't need to be afraid, when a sudden, panicked yelp echoed from further down the path. A small, fluffy puppy, one of the pack's newest litter, came tumbling into the grove, chasing a falling leaf. It was followed by a sharp cracking sound from above. Ryland's eyes shot upward. A heavy, dead branch was splintering from an old oak tree, directly above the oblivious puppy. Time seemed to slow. He tensed, ready to shift, to lunge, but he was a fraction too far away. He never got the chance. A voice, clear as a bell, sharp with pure panic, cut through the forest air. "No. Look out." Sasha moved like lightning. She dropped her basket, shoved the puppy out of the way with a force that sent it rolling safely into the ferns, and stumbled back herself, just as the branch crashed to the ground exactly where the puppy had been standing. Silence returned to the grove, thick and heavy and absolute. The puppy whimpered, shook itself, and trotted off, unharmed. Sasha was on her hands and knees, breathing heavily. And then, the reality of what she had done crashed down upon her. Her head snapped up, her eyes, wide with pure, undiluted terror, locked onto Ryland's. He was staring at her, his own shock evident. The voice. It had been her voice. It was slightly husky from disuse, but it was undeniably there, laced with emotion and life and everything her silence had pretended not to be. Her hands flew to her mouth as if she could physically stuff the words back in. She scrambled backward from him, her fear a sour scent that flooded the clearing. 8 years of careful pretense, shattered in one single instinctive moment. It was over. Everything was over. Rylan didn't move. He didn't advance. He slowly knelt down, bringing himself to her level, his expression one of awe and dawning understanding, not anger. "Sasha," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "You can speak." A sob escaped her, the first of many. The dam had broken. The tears she had held back for nearly a decade began to fall, tracing clean paths through the dust on her cheeks. The words, rusty and stumbling, followed them. I'm sorry. Please," she was trembling violently. "Shoo," he murmured, his voice a low, soothing balm. "You just saved a life. There is nothing to be sorry for. But why? Why would you do this to yourself?" He kept his distance, letting her come to him with the truth, making it her choice. And so, huddled on the forest floor, the kindest eyes she had ever seen waiting for her answer, Sasha told him. The words started slow, then poured out in a desperate river. She told him about Boris, his cold eyes and his terrible promise. She told him about the feigned sickness, the first day of silence, and then the next until the lie became her entire life. She spoke of the loneliness, the constant fear of being discovered, the weight of the secret that had bowed her shoulders for so long. She told him everything. Rylan listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't judge. His face grew dark and stormy at the mention of Boris's name, a low, almost inaudible growl rumbling in his chest. But his eyes on her remained soft, filled with a heartbreaking mixture of anger on her behalf and awe at her incredible strength. This wasn't a weakness he was witnessing. It was the most profound courage he had ever encountered. A young girl had sacrificed her own voice to save herself from a monster. As she finished, her story hanging in the air between them, Rylan felt something monumental click into place inside him. The strange pull, the irresistible draw, the need to protect her, it all made perfect, beautiful, terrifying sense. The moon goddess had not brought him to this insignificant pack on a whim. She had led him to the very heart of his destiny. He opened his mouth to speak, to tell her what he now knew in his very soul, when a new voice, cold and sharp as a shard of ice, sliced through the grove. Well, what do we have here?" Standing at the edge of the trees, a cruel smirk twisting his features, was Boris. His eyes glinted with malicious triumph as they landed on Sasha. "A little bird that can sing after all. It seems you've been keeping secrets, little one. And it seems my timing is perfect. I've come to collect what is mine." The air in the sun-dappled grove, which had moments before been thick with Sasha's confession and Rylan's dawning understanding, instantly turned to ice. Boris's presence was like a winter frost, killing the fragile warmth that had begun to bloom between them. His cold, triumphant eyes were fixed on Sasha, who had gone pale, instinctively shrinking back, her body trembling as 8 years of fear came crashing down upon her all at once. The nightmare she had sacrificed her voice to avoid was here, and her greatest secret was exposed. She was utterly defenseless. But she was not alone. In a single, fluid motion, Rylan was on his feet. He did not simply step in front of Sasha. He placed himself as an immovable barrier between her and the threat, his broad back blocking Boris from her view. His posture, which had been so open and gentle moments before, now radiated a terrifying, primal power. The air around him seemed to crackle with it. He was no longer just a man listening to a story, he was the Alpha King, and his territory was being challenged. "You are mistaken, Boris." Rylan's voice was low, but it carried through the clearing with the force of a thunderclap, devoid of any emotion but absolute authority. "Nothing here belongs to you." Boris's smirk faltered for just a second, surprised by the king's immediate and fierce defense of a simple pack girl. He recovered quickly, his own arrogance rising to meet the challenge. "This does not concern you, King Rylan. This is a matter between me and the girl. A claim was made long ago. Her parents accepted it. She is mine by right." Sasha's heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. This was it. This was the moment her worst fear came true. Even the king's protection might not be enough against the stubborn traditions of pack law. A claim was a serious thing. She clutched the fabric of her dress, waiting for the world to fall apart. Rylan didn't even glance back at her. His stormy blue eyes were locked on Boris, and a new, different kind of energy began to emanate from him. It wasn't just anger. It was deeper, more profound. It was a sense of absolute, unshakable certainty. "You speak of claims and rights," Rylan said, his voice dropping into a deeper, more resonant register, a tone that seemed to vibrate in the very bones of those who heard it. But you understand nothing of true rights. You know nothing of the moon goddess's design. He took one deliberate step forward, and Boris, despite himself, took a half step back. Your petty claim is dust. It is nothing. It is void. Boris's face flushed with anger and confusion. You cannot just void a claim. Who are you two? I am her mate. The words were not shouted. They were stated simply as a fact as undeniable as the rising sun. They hung in the air, shimmering with a truth so powerful it stole the breath from Sasha's lungs. Her eyes, wide with shock, lifted to look at Ryland's back. Could it be? Was that the reason for the pull, the strange warmth, the feeling of safety she felt near him? Boris stared, his mouth agape before a disbelieving, harsh laugh escaped him. A convenient fiction, King. You expect me to believe that you, the Alpha King, just happened to find your true mate in this backwater pack on this very day? You would say anything to take what you want. Ryland's patience vanished. A low, dangerous growl rumbled from his chest, a sound so inherently powerful that the leaves on the trees seemed to shiver. I do not take what is freely given by fate itself. He finally turned then just his head and his gaze found Sasha's. The storm in his eyes had gentled, replaced by a warmth so intense it felt like standing in a beam of sunlight. In that look, Sasha felt the truth of his words resonate in her own soul. The connection she felt wasn't just gratitude or fear, it was the same pull he felt. It was destiny. Sasha, he said, his voice softening only for her. The choice is yours and yours alone. The moon goddess brings true mates together, but it is our will that seals the bond. He extended his hand toward her, palm open, an offering, not a demand. Do you accept me? Will you be my mate? Every ounce of fear, every year of silence, every moment of loneliness rose up in her. She looked from Ryland's open, honest face to Boris's snarling, furious one. The choice was between a life of continued fear and a leap of faith into the unknown, guided by a feeling more real and powerful than anything she had ever known. She found her voice. It did not shake. It was clear and strong, ringing through the clearing like a bell finally freed after years of silence. Yes. It was only one word, but it held the weight of 8 years of suppressed hope. I accept you, Ryland. I choose you. As the word left her lips, Ryland's hand closed around hers. The moment their skin touched, a brilliant, warm, golden light erupted from their joined hands, wrapping around them both in a shimmering, beautiful cocoon. It was the physical manifestation of the mate bond, accepted and sealed, a magic as old as their kind. It was a light that could not be faked, a truth that could not be denied. It filled Sasha with a sense of belonging, of warmth, of pure, uncomplicated love so overwhelming that fresh tears, this time of joy, streamed down her face. Boris stumbled backward, his face a mask of stunned defeat. He shielded his eyes from the brilliant light, the evidence of his failure undeniable. To challenge a true mate bond was to challenge the moon goddess herself. He was utterly and completely defeated. With a snarl of pure rage, he turned and vanished into the trees, his retreat as swift as it was shameful. The golden light slowly faded, but the warmth remained, settling deep inside both of them. They were left alone in the clearing, hands still clasped, the world around them forever changed. Ryland cupped her face with his other hand, his thumb gently wiping away her tears. It's over, Sasha, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. You are free. You never have to be silent again. Your voice, he smiled, a real breathtaking smile, your voice is the most beautiful sound I will ever hear. I will spend every day of my life making sure you never regret using it. Sasha looked up at him, her alpha, her king, her mate. The fear that had been a constant companion for so long was simply gone. In its place was a feeling of safety so profound it made her dizzy. A real, genuine smile, the first one in 8 long years, spread across her face, bright and unburdened. She was free. Her life of silence and fear was over, and a new joyful song was just beginning. And so, dear reader, their story found its happy beginning, a tale of courage, love, and a voice finally found. But the world of the Pax is vast and filled with many more stories waiting to be told. If you journeyed with Sasha and Ryland, if you felt the thrill of their bond and the warmth of their hard-won happiness, then consider joining our pack. Subscribe to stay updated, because another adventure is always just howling on the horizon.